welcome to the show, first of all. Mike, this is Mike, by the way, Mike Lukajenic. He and I had been boys for, 7 years, 8 years already?
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's 2015. Actually, no, it was way before that, because I know when we met it was actually through our boy Danny Boy.
Yeah, no. So in that case, I think 2013, 2014.
Yeah, it was with at the party. The party yeah. Yeah, but that's how we actually got close from there. Actually, at that point, it was kind of like acquaintances because of Dan, because we knew of each other. But I think after 2015, 2016, and also that's when you started going to the gym.
Yeah.
At Gold's, that's when I really bonded with you and we hung out a lot. And I think 2017 was the time when we actually hung out a lot. And that, to me, I think that's where we kind of builded our relationship, had deep conversations and stuff like that. So it's nice to see how far you and I have come.
Yeah.
But going about you, what you've been up to lately.
Oh man, it's been a lot of, I'd say, large life steps. You know how you kind of go through that short period where it's quiet and all of a sudden, one thing changes and another, then another, and then another.
Yeah,
it kind of feels, over the past couple months, I think it's just been a wild ride. I know work was probably the biggest one. You kind of get to that point where you realize this isn't the right place for me.
Yeah.
You transition, that's one large step.
Yeah. Call it the obstacle course.
Exactly.
It's funny because actually that happened to me too back in October, November. And the funny thing about that was that was the first time I've ever done I'm leaving a full-time job and transitioning to another full-time job with, it's a better position for me, obviously the conveniency was nice, but I think that kind of the process was too is saying goodbye to the people you had a very strong relationship with at work, especially when they helped you out throughout the years. Yeah. So for me, it was the emotional area for me was very mixed. It was happy, it was sad. I think it was there's a term for it. It's happy and sad. It's a bittersweet. That's what it is. Yeah, it felt bittersweet, especially at the end of my last day at that job, and then going into the new job too. So the process really took October to December to finally get situated with the new job, because you still have to go through the process of the benefits and all that stuff. Then you have to go through the training with the new job, meeting new people, and then what you're getting yourself into. And that process, even when I started, took almost 2 months to finally get situated. So I know how you feel. So wait, what's the job you have now? This is recently, right?
Yes. So okay. I got lucky. I jumped out of IT. IT was fun for a while it lasted.
By the way you looked at it, you were just it was fun while it lasted.
It's like a personal purgatory.
I don't blame you. It's one of those things. If it's just oh my god, I feel I can't be here for a while. It's time for me to take it to another job, better position, and probably maybe the coworkers are cool originally, but then it's not even the coworkers at the point. It's just you.
That was great. I mean, don't get me wrong. The position was a lot of me paying my dues, I think, in my career field, because the long-term goal was to go and do cybersecurity, because it's entirely very, very prevalent these days. It's high in demand. It's
very high in demand. Yeah. You see the technology that we have nowadays. Cybersecurity is definitely a big field now, because of now everyone's putting in their records or files digitally, and with all digital files, they need to be protected. And so cybersecurity comes in because they're protecting you guys from hackers or threats or anything like that. And once your important sources get taken away, you're basically screwed. And then that can be used for other things. Maybe companies could steal it from other companies. You never know. And then they can utilize that for money. So it's that's why I feel that's I think a cool place for you to go and see yourself go into is cybersecurity. And so when you're talking about cybersecurity, what's the company that you're in for cybersecurity?
I work for Spirit Technologies.
Gotcha.
Where we focus on data governance. It's not, I'd say, the 21st century Hollywood kind of layout.
Right.
I got someone typing away really fast.
Yeah.
It's more so coming in, looking at how an entire company's infrastructure is laid out in terms of the data, their applications, and we come in and sort it out. We make sure that there are proper permissions. We make sure that nothing is open access.
Right.
And everything is accounted for.
Gotcha.
We're almost like the like the physical security of a site where we walk in, we look around, we make sure all the doors are closed, make sure that no one that shouldn't have access is able to scan into wherever they want to.
Yeah.
And we keep an eye on all of it. And we're able to go in and really lay it out in a sort of way that all of our clients can look at it and understand what their infrastructure looks like, rather than someone coming in, spewing a bunch of terms and then saying, all right, fine, do whatever you need to. Here's a check, have fun.
Yeah. Because I always feel like the base of it all is to know the system. If you don't know the system or the infrastructure, or if no one trains you on it, you're basically going to go there looking like a chicken head, basically. Like, when are you going to go in there, like, with, like, oh, yeah, come in here, and you're just like, I have no idea, like, what the hell is going on. You know what I mean? So it definitely is key to know the infrastructure and also know, like, how the company works, too. Because, like, the company, they probably have, like, a good history of why they're up there or why they're known. You know what I mean? And definitely infrastructure is always one of the primary places to legitimately understand the success that they have.
Absolutely.
Spheres Technology?
Spheres Technology,
yeah. And you started recently, right? I think from what you told me.
It's only been a month now, I think. Just under a month.
Just under a month. So you're basically still in the training mode.
Yeah.
Because everything is still kind of like, again, you're in the process of like transitioning. So I always say, like, from my experience, it was like 2 months. For you, it could be shorter or it could be longer. You never know, depending on like how the company utilize what they're trying to entail you for. So that's awesome though. Like, you got your job going, you know, you're living your life, and basically, like, I always thought that you were always like a good guy with work ethic, because I know that you always want to, like, if you see yourself going for something, you always want to go for something. Yeah. So that's actually pretty cool. I always like, and that's why you and I got really close, because I know you and I were trying to get each other to take the next steps. And when I say, oh yeah, I got a new job, I'm like, oh yeah, like, appreciate that. Yeah, no. So anyway, that's awesome though. That's awesome. So one of the things too, I know we had this conversation. We wanted to discuss about this topic, and it will definitely go in depth for sure. Because I know one of the things too, I thought about it as well, and I always wanted to know the reason. So we talk about like families, right? We talk about the future, you know, and we talk about like when you have a family, you want kids. I think for you, from what you've told me in your past, that you definitely don't want to have kids. So tell me more like about that. Like what kind of, like, where did the origin come from? You know what I mean? Like, and I know you're like 100% like, I don't want kids. I don't want kids. So like, where did that start from? I was like curious.
Okay, well, get comfortable.
Allow me. Here we go.
So I think the biggest thing to keep in mind going into this topic, before I kind of get into, I guess, my personal ties to this opinion, is kind of looking at the idea of having kids as a whole. In this day and age, I think that it has become a very difficult thing to do for anyone, even people that are prepared to have kids. I think that society has kind of made this almost like a priority, less so than a willingness and a want to do. And a lot of times people think that this is something that they want, and instead they're treating it more as though a band-aid for their own personal problems. And looking at all these different issues, I kind of looked at myself and I thought, well, first of all, I don't want to make that mistake myself. I don't want to kind of haphazardly bring another life into this world when I'm trying to keep track of my own. All right. There's some mornings where I don't even know what I want for breakfast, let alone
I do too. I'll be like, like, I mean, I'm like the type of guy, like, I don't have to, like, I'll have breakfast every once in a while, but like when I have the time, I always like, do I want cereal? Do I want like all that stuff? Yeah. But sorry, continue.
That's a struggle.
That's already the start off. Like, wait, why can't, like, if I'm gonna have a hard time having a kid, especially having a hard time trying to figure out what I want for breakfast, like
exactly.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, but go ahead, continue. Sorry. So
no, you're good. So kind of keeping all that in mind, I started, kind of sitting down and thinking, maybe one day, who knows, possibly. And I think the more I thought about it and the more I kind of kept it in the back of my mind, the more I was turned off from the idea. Because as I saw the interactions people have, the responsibilities that come with having the whole family, the strain that it puts on people, and just every aspect, as I looked at it piece by piece, just none of it was appealing to me. None whatsoever.
Okay, I see.
And like you said, I think the both of us are very, very driven people. We love to, when we see a goal, we go for it. We say that's the goal. Facts. What do we have to do to get to that point? A, B, C, and D, whatever it is, we're gonna get there one way or another.
Right.
And I'm looking at myself and I'm thinking, all right, how have I been doing? I want a better job. busted my ass. I got there. I wanted, a motorcycle. I worked, saved, got my license, got it. Now I got an even faster one because I could. I put in the time, and I got to that point. I was hoping to find, a stable relationship, something happy. I took the time. I went out. I met people.
Gotcha.
And I gave it time until I finally organically clicked with someone.
Right.
And there was always this natural progression of, what am I going to do for myself to get to where I want to be? And, kind of kick off the point. It may make me sound a bit selfish.
Right.
But
there's nothing wrong with that.
Kids kind of get in the way of that.
Right. So it's like your own like personal like preference. Like, cause like you feel like you have like the list. You probably had the thought of it too. Like, what are the benefits of having a kid?
Yeah.
What are the cons of having a kid? You know what I mean? And it probably like at that point you kind of like realized like there were more cons to having a kid. Now the one thing too, because it's everyone's personal preference. So it's nice to know that there's someone like yourself that wouldn't want a kid. I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people out there that don't want kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I always like think to myself too, like for me, like I want to have a kid at some point, like not yet, because I'm not like emotionally, mentally there yet. You know what I mean? When the time comes, like you said, organically, if I find like the significant other that I can click with and it goes above and beyond, and then maybe in that marriage, then yeah, like I'll think about having a kid. You know what I mean? Because for me, like, from my personal reasons why I want a kid, and I respect your reasons too to not have a kid. Like for me, it's because like, for me, like I want to keep not just the tradition, but like keep the family name going. You know what I mean? That's one of the reasons too. I also do like kids. Like that's just me. Like I love like when I like see a little kid, I'm like, hi, like how you doing? And then they just have like that genuine smile that for no reason they're just smiling, but I love it. And then like I again, especially like just I guess the tradition of a family lifestyle. Like I do want to have a wife, kids. If you ever tell me what my max is for kids, like 2 kids. 2 kids at max. 3 would be. In my head, I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna die. Like
that's a lot of shoes.
Yeah, it's a lot of shoes to fill. Like that's a lot of humans that you're gonna have to take care of. You know what I mean? It's a lot of humans. Yeah. So for me, like, I would love to have a kid, just not right now. You know what I mean? But it's nice to hear from your end because a lot of people would always ask like, how come you don't want a kid?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and who knows? Maybe later down the road, it might become like a significant factor. So say for example, like you don't want a kid, right? And say you had a organic relationship, right? But then that significant other wants a kid, what do you do there? Like what's
out?
Is that a deal breaker?
Out. It's a deal breaker.
Ooh, do tell.
I made that very clear with every person that I've ever since I got to that point where I decided I don't think I ever want kids. I made that very clear with anyone that I would get romantically involved with. I made it very upfront, saying, hey, I know this may seem premature, it might seem early. I know most people say like, oh, like this isn't a topic for the next 3-4 years. But I would mention it up front. I don't want to have kids. I don't see myself having kids. I don't want anything to do with kids. It's not that I hate them.
Yeah.
I just don't want them.
You just don't
in my life whatsoever. Whether it be that you have one and you're bringing it in, or you would eventually like to have one. Because this is eventually it's going to come up. At the at the end of the day, you're dating to see a long-term thing with someone to grow with and live your life with.
Right.
And if they eventually want to have kids and you don't want to have kids, there's no compromise.
And there's
you can't have half a kid.
Right. It's like you can't have a. So well, let's split it. How?
Yeah, exactly.
you want left and then there's no right. Like basically. So then that means okay. So when we go into that, right? So for example, I'm just throwing a scenario out there. So say in the beginning, I know you would address it in the beginning just to give them a fair warning. Like basically, if we're gonna go into this, I'm just letting you know I don't want kids. That's like the first thing you would do because you always want to address important things that can later impact the relationship down the road, right? But what if she like it's a what if because you never know. What if she agreed to it? Like okay, yeah, like that's fine. Like I don't want kids. And then 2 years into the relationship, she's just like I really thought about it. I kind of really think I want kids. Like maybe I was like completely like in the beginning I didn't think about it, but then as she processed it now, like to the end, she was just like, now I actually think I want a kid. Which is I want to know how you would deal with it because that's already 2 years in to the relationship. And it's like you already did enough, you invested enough with that significant other for 2 years, So what would you do in that scenario? That's a tough scenario. I'm not gonna lie.
No, 100%.
You know, it's something that I like was just like, I'm kind of curious of how he's gonna answer this. I'm kind of
right for the deep stuff.
Oh hell yeah, man! Welcome to the dark roast. We miss you out here.
I like it. I like it. All right, you know, it wouldn't be fun if it was easy. Well, the reality is, my opinion wouldn't change. My opinion wouldn't change, and I would tell them, listen, maybe your opinion has, but mine hasn't, and at that point, it's one person's gonna end up being happy in the situation, the other one's not. If and there's no compromise. There's just no compromise.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think if I was in that position, that relationship's gonna be over.
Oof.
Even if it's 2 years in, because think about it. Yeah, it's 2 years, 100%. You've had your experiences. I'm sure at that point, like, you love each other deeply. You've had countless of memories. But now line that up with having a kid. That's a lifelong commitment. That's a lifelong commitment. So what are you going to trade? Those 2 years for, you know, who knows what else might happen, or do you want to commit even further and now potentially end up with a child that you're going to have for, at the very least, the next 18 years, which we all know it's probably going to be longer than that.
Longer for sure, yeah. Damn.
And miserable. You could potentially end up miserable, and you know, you don't want to sit there loathing your own family.
Right.
It's just something that you could avoid.
Right.
So looking, you know, at the 2 years doesn't seem like that much when thinking long term.
Yeah.
And most people don't think in that regards. They think in the moment, like, oh, I'm so happy. Why would I let this go? And they don't think, what's it going to be like down the line, a couple months down the line.
Yeah. That's the thing, too, because it's like, I've always said, you know, live in the moment, you know, especially like when organic relationships happen, they're always in the moment. But then as soon as like you go deep into it, you then just start thinking about like the little details. So I guess from what I'm hearing, or what I'm seeing, is that having no kids is part of like your non-negotiable values, meaning that I've said this from my previous podcast with Lorraine, that non-negotiables are ones that there's no discussion. Like, I'm not negotiating that value with you. Like, it's off. That's off. Like, so for you, it's kids. And then I guess too, I also thought about it too. Like, what about your family? Like, do your family, have you ever even discussed that with your family about that shit? Oh man, bro.
Let's see. Let's hope they never see this.
Oh god. Don't worry. Don't show the link. Don't even share the link.
There we go.
Yeah.
No, it's gonna come up in a couple years, and it'll be like, this is why.
Right. Can you imagine, like, just 2 decades from now, like, they're like, oh, like, we saw something from this podcast that we're hearing. Why didn't we get this addressed 20 years ago, buddy?
I've been running ever since. Swim, Mom. That's why I moved.
No, I feel you. So so that's another thing too, because, you know, again, with the no kids is your part of your core value, and it's just your core value. You know what I mean? And I know, like, especially like traditional families, like your parents are traditional, so they always think, same with my parents. They always think like, we expect you to be married happily, maybe with the same like culture and religion and all that stuff. Like, yeah, dude. Like, my parents always setting me up with some like Filipino chick and all that stuff like that. We get the nurses, you know. But at the end of the day, like, they have to understand, like, you know, we're in a new era. Well, we can still keep the tradition, but then now everything is more free. Yeah. Like, you start to realize what kind of values you keep non-negotiable. So for you realize you took it upon yourself to research that mentally, emotionally. You're like, okay, no kids, that's not negotiable. I'm not having like any discussions. Like, if you're trying to argue with me on this, you're screwed, because I'm gonna choose what I have to choose. You know what I mean?
Those values are set in stone.
Exactly. Now, the reason why I always mention family, because family is also a value. You know what I mean? It's part of the, and you know this, so you agree that family is also a non-negotiable. Yep. So now you have a non-negotiable versus a non-negotiable, and then probably had a conversation with your parents. I don't know if you did, but I know your parents want you to have a kid.
We've had our little spats here and there. You know?
Yeah, and I've always wanted to know, like, what was it like? You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go into detail of it, because you know, it's probably a personal thing, but it is something that I'm kind of curious, because you never know. You know, like, people that, you know, the viewers are probably like I'm probably in that same situation too. Yeah. You know, so if, like, I don't want a kid, but then my family wants a kid, and I know they're also part of my non-negotiable core values, and this is gonna be an intertwined war, like, both emotionally and mentally. You know, so, like, what do you, like, you know, what was the arguments like? Like, don't go into detail with it, but, like, give me
Yeah.
like a little bit of a synopsis of it.
I mean, I think the first time it really came up was I think I was sitting at dinner with the family. You know,
Are we talking about like the main family, where they had everybody decided to come in with the whole?
just the parents, just the
Oh, I
parents,
was about
and
to say,
sibling.
like,
That was
they
a
put you
small,
on-
yeah,
yeah,
just right on the spot. 50 people in the room. It's like,
Yeah.
never, no one kids.
Yeah,
We're getting crucified right there.
put you on the spot like that. They're gonna be like this, just like, what'd you say?
Been chewed out by a bunch of Polish grandmas.
Yeah,
Just,
right. Like, no, we need you to pass on the tradition. But sorry, so yeah, it was just your main family. So like,
Yeah,
you, your
so we're
mom, your
sitting
dad.
around having dinner, and I think that the topic, how the topic eventually comes up with it, like, oh, just wait till you have your own, and I don't even remember how it led up to that, but essentially the conversation was like A, B, C, and then the point got brought up where it's, oh, wait till you have your own, and you'll be dealing with this too, and I guess B, without second thought at that point, just
Triggered.
yeah, I was just like, well, it's a good thing I don't plan on dealing with that.
They were just like, excuse me, like
Yeah,
pardon?
exactly like that.
Okay,
It was kind of
okay.
like a, oh, what did you say?
right.
Hold up.
So, like,
yeah.
And so, like, what was their first reaction? It's probably a surprise. I think it was a
Yeah.
surprise.
Yeah.
Maybe kind of, I don't want to say worrisome. Was it worrisome for them? Like, was it like a concern?
I think they
feeling?
were more surprised because I
okay.
guess in their mind, they just assumed that the natural progression is that I'll start dating, I'll get married, and then I'll have kids, and I'll have a house in the backyard somewhere. Like, that was default. Like, there was no way my life could go any other way.
AKA
whatsoever.
the traditional.
Exactly.
The traditional.
Exactly. There was no breaking that chain.
Yeah.
Like, they did it, their parents did it, their grandparents did it.
So we expect
Therefore,
our kids to do the same.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But that's not the
Exactly.
case. But yeah, so that happened. The situation kind of arises. I mean, it probably wasn't like that crazy of a situation, but they were probably surprised and kind of curious. You know what I mean? Because it's just like, I think maybe, so your parents are pretty understanding. So they probably understand too that this is like a new generation. You know what I mean? So everyone's kind of open to saying their own thoughts and how their own feelings. You know what I mean? As much as I can feel it too, especially because I feel like my parents and your parents kind of correlate.
Yep.
They always at the end of the day will follow that tradition. You know what I mean? So they have an understanding, but they prefer you to have that tradition. You know what I mean? And so that's where like this intertwined war is happening. You know what I mean? Because as much as you love your family, at the end of the day too, you also have your own personal choice, and they know that they can't do much about it. You know, as much as it's unfortunate for them, but it's like you also have to realize like I'm also a grown ass man that has a decision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So continue on. So like there was more like obviously a surprise. The reaction was kind of like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I made a joke. I think I looked at my sibling and I was like, oh, if you want kids, talk to him. That's a him problem.
Does he want kids? Like,
Oh yeah, he's like, I want like 3 or 4. Like, he wants a miniature army.
Oh, that makes
he's
up for it.
set. Yeah, he's just like, he's got like a small orchestra ready to go. He's gonna pick out different instruments for each of them.
oh, that makes up for it. See,
Yeah, I was like, I'm a cool uncle. Swing by every once in a while.
Yeah.
Buy the presents.
by the president, yeah.
Say
So
hi and leave.
and then leave and then go for it from there. Okay. So I see. At least your brother wants kids. You know what I mean? So I guess with them, maybe because does it also impact the fact that you were the eldest child?
Possibly.
Do you think so?
Possibly. I think at the end of the day, I'm sure they had this idea in their head of what they hoped that my life would turn out. Probably because of tradition.
Tradition, right?
And they are probably, I mean, right now on this topic, they're not coming to terms with it because I guess they're in their heads they're thinking, oh, down the line he'll change. Like eventually he'll change. Even though this has been going on for the past, I think, 4 years now.
Like
back and forth.
Yeah, like they're expecting like, oh no, like he'll
Like
be,
one day it'll just click and it'll be like, you know what? I do want kids. I don't like sleeping in on Saturdays anymore. Like, I want someone.
It's like, yeah, like I don't want to. I'll be good. I'll have kids. But that's not the case, though. You know what I mean? Because realistically, they have to understand, like, you also have a choice. You have emotions. You have thoughts. That all correlated to how you ended up with this choice. You know what I mean? And so that's the thing about, like, especially like with the old traditional, like old school families. You know what I mean? Like they always expect the assumptions, and they're thinking, all right, he's gonna have kids. I mean, for me, like obviously, like I want kids and stuff like that. And so the issue with my parents is like they have like a it's the same thing with like all like the traditional like Filipino like families that they want you to go for like your same kind, like your same race. You know what I mean? Because it's not just the race; it's more like the culture, the traditions. Your family and my family are Filipino, so we can correlate. We got our asses beat. We got our asses beat with like a slipper and a belt, so you and I can correlate. You know, another fact too is like, you know, they have to, like, I don't, this part I kind of don't understand, which is like, yeah, like they're nurses. I'm like, I mean, like, I always tell my parents, like they don't have, like, as long as they have like a career path that they're passionate about,
they're
stable, you know, that to me is more important than just a nurse.
Yeah.
If they're a nurse, then fantastic. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? If they're a nurse, like, could be Filipino, could be not, like, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as I have like an inner, like, intellectual connection with them, emotional connection with them, then I'm all for it. You know what I mean? But it doesn't have to be like a nurse all the time. Like, my parents literally tried setting me up with these motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would just be like, yo, like, to me, I don't like setups. I could try, but it's just not organic to me.
Yeah.
That's just my personal thought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It works for others though. People got set up, and then it actually became a successful, like, relationship. And they ended up getting married. And
that's probably be like your friends who like spend more time with you, really
Yeah.
know you. Your parents, I think, know you more on like a surface level when it comes to your dating life.
Yeah,
So when they
with
try to
dating
set
life.
you up, they're going through like the same 2 or 3 criteria, and if those line up, they're like, in you go.
Yeah, like, there you go. And that's why, to me, like, they have to understand, like, it's, again, like, the tradition, I get it. You know what I mean? But they also, like, understand too that we're in a new generation. So they know, like, they always just keep reminding me, just for shits and giggles. They'll just be like, hey, you know, I got like I talked to this mom, by the way, she's single. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you guys could just start off as, that's like my mom start off as like, we're just trying to be friends. And I'm like, Mom, listen, I know it's not just friends. Like, this is more than like,
We know where you're coming from.
yeah, we know.
this.
Yeah, you, like, her mom and you are like good relationships at work. Stop that shit.
We know.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why, going back to it, you know, I get why families follow those traditions. You know what I mean? They want to continue the Luca-genic like era. They want to keep the trend going. You know what I mean? It just happens, unfortunately for you. It's not for me.
Yeah.
And they have to respect that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why I thought I wanted to ask that question, because it's part of the core value situation where both are non-negotiable. But it's just like you're fighting between your own choices and a family's choices, you know? And at the end of the day, you always have to put yourself on the pedestal first, even though it's a family thing, you know what I mean? Like, do you ever, like, felt that? Like, when you, like, probably in the moment you thought about it, you were just like, oh, man, like, I know these are my family, and I know they always want what's best for me. Like, you ever thought about that? But at the end of the day, like, I know this is what's best for me.
Yeah. So I could get behind that if, let's say, I was 7 years old and I'm not trying to eat my entire bag of Halloween candy, because I know how that's gonna end. My stomach's gonna hurt. I'm gonna have cavities.
Yeah, and
I regret that.
Yeah.
But, you know, at this point in my life where, you know, I moved out, I'm living on my own, I'm taking care of myself. At this point, I feel like I can comfortably say that I'm looking out for myself in a way that they no longer do.
Right.
So for them to check in every couple months and say, "Hey, have you popped out a miniature you yet?" And, you know, it's kind of like, okay.
Is that like is that a joke, or is that like you're trying to low key simmer me into that?
Yeah, they're just like, yeah, it's a joke.
But deep down, no, it's not a joke.
Hey, what's up? You talking to anyone?
Yeah, talk to the younger brother. Yeah, I mean, talk to your younger son. He'll take care of that situation.
That's all him. That's all him. He'll be fine.
Yeah, but that's the thing though. Like, but there is a lot of beneficial factors to, if you don't want a kid. There's a lot of things you can do. Like, I've conversed this with Lorraine on the previous conversations. Traveling is one of the beneficial factors. If you don't want a kid, you can have the luxury to travel different places. You know what I mean? But it also depends on the significant other. If is she a homebody or is she a traveler? If she's a traveler, fantastic. Yeah. You know, but you have the luxury. Like you feel like you're not limited. Because the kid's like a kid's not in your way.
You don't have that limiting factor.
Yeah, so that's, I feel like, another thing why I can envision why that's a benefit for you. Yeah, because I think you want to, like, travel, explore things. You know, your money is yours. You know what I mean? That's another thing too. I feel like you save a lot of money.
A lot.
Yeah,
a lot.
Is there anything else in particular that you have reasons why not to have a kid?
Yes. Time is one thing. Right. Money's another. But it's also just the strain and, like, the energy levels that just drop down just considering it, like, what it's like to have a kid. I mean, imagine working a 9 to 5, You know,
Right.
not everyone works a 9 to 5, 8 to 4, or whatever. Like, they have their set hours for the week. Then
Right.
you spend the entire day, you're working, you're exhausted by the time you get home.
Yeah.
But then, what if you have to now go, pick up the kid from school? You have to take it to band practice or soccer practice or whatever. Or you have to go out and you have to go shopping so you could do cook dinner tonight. And then you're just nonstop doing things over and over and over again. It's a lot.
It's a lot of sacrifice.
And then by the time you sit down and have time for yourself, you got 35 minutes to like an hour. Where like they probably finally went to bed and you can sit down and you're just staring at the ceiling exhausted, knowing that you have to wake up tomorrow and do this for another 4 days.
Yeah. And
then the weekend comes around
and you still got to do the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're probably waking up early to take them somewhere, take them to hang out with, their take them on a play date, take them on vacation.
I get you.
Yeah. And you just don't have time. And
time management. Yeah.
It's insane to like think back to let's say like when we were kids. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I felt like I had all the time in the world, all the time, like because there was always something going on. And I think I read an article where the reason why we felt like our childhoods were just so long and eventful was because we did so many things. Everything was exciting, everything was new, there was always something going on.
I see.
So because of that, we had so many more points on the timeline to refer to, and we had so many things. So as a result, it felt like our childhood was this huge thing.
Right.
But now, as adults, like we wake up, we go to work, we drink the same cup of coffee, we fill out the same reports, we come home, we make dinner, maybe watch a show, maybe go to the gym. It's a lot more linear. Like there's just the same stuff going over and over again. So when you do get to have something happen, it's not very often. But you finally start to realize you don't have a lot of time. Time flies by. It's such a fleeting thing that you really want to start appreciating every moment that you do have. And if let's say you do love kids, then you're gonna love that time you spend with your kids, raising them, taking them, seeing them take their first steps, taking them to the park, seeing their achievements. That's what you're gonna love. But in my case, I love being able to spend those first 30 minutes when I wake up on a Saturday just not relaxing, just not doing anything, not worrying about anything, just recharging and having that time to myself, and then getting up out of bed and saying, what am I going to do today? Because I can do anything I want. I can hop on the motorcycle, I can go somewhere, I could watch a show, play some video games, I could go visit a friend and do a podcast.
Oh, we're here?
It's crazy. I think I'm doing that right now.
That's live right now?
Because I have no obligation to that extent.
Yeah, you have no like limitation, you know? And I feel for you on that, because it's like, I know like not just you, a bunch of people will feel the same way if they don't want a kid because of those reasons. You know what I mean? Time management, money, you're limited to things that you want to do, and that really does play a significant factor on why you shouldn't have kids. You know what I mean? And then there's other factors too, where there's a lot of people that do want kids. Like, you know what I mean? It depends on, I guess, the person. You know what I mean? And that's why I always feel like it's cool that you always say it in the beginning of like a relationship with somebody, like, I don't want kids. So either if you're not about that, then it's not worth going into this. You know what I mean? And that's part of your non-negotiable value, you know, because of those reasons, you know. And then it's better for people that do have kids, making sure that both significant others want it. You know, for me, like, I would want kids because I love kids. You know, that's just my personal. Yeah, it's gonna take up money and all that stuff like that. That's why I'm not ready for one. You know what I mean? But I always felt like having a kid is like it's just like a genuine, powerful thing for me. You know what I mean? Because that's like my son. Like, I want to feel the experience of raising one, even though it's gonna be stressful.
Oh, I cannot.
I've heard a bunch of like coworkers in like their like 40s, and like they're like in the teenage years. Oh no, maybe not teenagers, maybe like a little bit younger, and they're like, don't have kids. And I'm like, really? He's just like, yeah, just trust me on that. Like, don't have kids. It's just a lot, blah, 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 blah. And then in my head, I'm like, oh, I feel for that. And I thought about you, too. Because when they say that, I'm just like, man, Mike must be ahead of the game or something. You know what I mean?
He's onto something.
He's onto something. Which is why it then correlates to what we're talking about now. It's just like, I see why you don't want to have kids. Even though I kind of knew the reason, but the viewers don't know.
Yeah.
But viewers would like to hear, like, people that, like, why? How come they don't want kids?
Yeah.
Well, it's because of X, Y, and Z. That's why. And it's not like against anybody. It's just your personal preference. You don't want kids. You know?
And you're affording people the opportunity to kind of discuss this topic because for the most part, to me, it feels like we are living in this child-centric society where it's such a large focus, or it's like an assumption that unless someone says otherwise, everyone's going to have kids. everyone. It's just you're gonna have them whether you like it or not. And it's crazy how some people phrase that sometimes. They're just like, just wait till they have your own, as if there is no conceivable future
like
of
there's
not
there's no like they're already predicting it at that point they're gonna have a kid.
Yeah.
Like, but that's not the case. You know what I mean? That's why the assumptions with like your origin of your main family, like you always have to address it. Like, guys, just for the record, like it's not. You have to realize I have a decision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everybody has their own decision. If I tell you like I don't want a kid, like I don't want a kid. You know what I mean? Maybe my brother does, so you can go talk to him about that. You know what I mean? But I can guarantee you from my like heart and soul and my mind, I don't want a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm hoping, and at the end of the day, because I know we were talking about family and stuff like that, I'm hoping like your family later down the road will understand it.
Yeah.
Right now, I feel like at this particular moment with your family, it's like they're still thinking the prediction. You know what I mean? Again, they're gonna look back into the. If they find this podcast, bro, and they hear this shit,
they're gonna see you on that bike gone. You're leaving the state.
And they're gonna be like, oh, so you did have this plan that you weren't kidding. I'm like, yeah, like I've been saying this from the beginning of time that I didn't want kids. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, though, like I'm hoping that they accept that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As much as it's hard for them to, they have to.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that wanted kids. You know, so as a parent too, you always have to accept things. You know what I mean? On what they want to do, and it's tough. Because that's always like the one thing too, especially if my mentality at some point I want to be a parent, I have to know the sacrifices, and I have to know like for me, I could see myself like in that moment as a dad. Again, I'm not going there yet because I'm not there yet, but I could see it like as a dad too. Like if I had a kid, raising it is already an obstacle course, but then having decisions that they make and it doesn't align to something you expect is another challenge, because maybe there's some things that I might not agree on, but then at the end of the day, that's your son or daughter. Like if they want that choice to do art, then I can't stop you. Like, you know what I mean? I'm happy for you. You know what I mean? Because I know some parents, like, I don't going into depth with the kids situation, but I know some parents, like, they have like those disagreements, like, no, you're doing this.
They have expectations.
Yeah, they expect you to do this. And again, depending on the parent too, you know what I mean? If you have a strict parents, like, they're going to make you, and it sucks too, because then it'll mentally, like, the kid's going to be mentally, like, traumatized, you know what I mean? And now they're so, because of the strict parents and all that stuff, I'm not going to go too in depth with it, but, like, that's what I would think, But that's the reason why I would want a kid, because I always want to challenge myself, see, like, I want to see how it feels like to be a parent.
Yeah.
Even though I know a lot of people would be like, don't have kids. But, like, I do be, like, when I feel like I'm ready, like, I know I want to have a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But for you, it's like, the obligations, I got none. Yeah. I'm going to be flying out to Poland in no time. You know what I'm saying?
Because I have a flight to catch up.
Yeah, I got a flight to catch up and stuff like that. But anyway, thank you for coming to the show, man. Appreciate this. Because, again, I always like when we talk about things like this, and for people that, don't hear your voice on, like, kids or not having kids. People want to know that. People want to know that for sure. And then what were the outcomes of it? Because not many people would understand it, but it's nice to hear from somebody that went through it to make viewers understand it. So again, thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts on, like, why you don't want to have kids.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime.
But, hey. All right, time to drink. See you, season.